The fire alarm shriek tore through the main hall just as Teresa from HR opened her mouth to make the announcement. "We're thrilled to announce our new Vice President of Operations." My name never made it past her lips. 300 employees shifted in confusion. Papers rustled as people rose from their chairs. My heart sank. Not today. Not after everything I'd done to get here. Through the chaos, I saw Penny standing by the wall. Our eyes locked across the room. The corner of her mouth lifted, not in surprise or concern, but satisfaction, pure and cold. As we shuffled toward the emergency exits, she brushed against my shoulder. "Maybe next time," she whispered. "Looks like the universe has other plans." But she missed what I saw just before everyone started moving. Our CEO, Damien, holding his phone up, pointed directly at the fire alarm panel. Our eyes met. He gave a slight nod before sliding his phone into his jacket pocket. Before I continue this story, if you're enjoying it so far, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. The comment section is open if you want to guess what happens next, but I promise the truth is wilder than anything you might imagine. My name is Lydia Pierce, and 6 months ago, I thought I understood office politics. I'd navigated corporate waters for 12 years in financial services, rising steadily through the ranks. I'm analytical, detail-oriented, and I believed in honest work. That was probably my first mistake. I started at the company as an analyst when we were just 50 people trying to revolutionize investment strategies. I watched us grow to over 3,000 employees across 7 countries. When the operations director position opened 4 years ago, I applied and got it. That's when Penny joined my team. She arrived with stellar recommendations and a charisma that disarmed everyone. She had this way of making each person feel special, like they were part of some exclusive club, including me. Especially me. We became friends, real friends, I thought. She joined my family's holiday dinner. I helped her move into her new apartment. When her mother was diagnosed with cancer, I covered her workload for weeks. When I caught pneumonia during budget season, she brought homemade chicken soup and handled my urgent calls. "We're unstoppable together," she'd say, clinking her coffee mug against mine during late-night planning sessions. When the company announced a restructuring initiative, I was tasked with creating a proposal to streamline operations. The executive team made it clear, whoever impressed them with their vision would likely step into the new VP role. "Let's collaborate on this," Penny suggested. 2 minds working as one. For 6 weeks, we stayed until midnight building a comprehensive plan. We ordered greasy pizza, created detailed workflows, and joked about our boss's habit of sending emails at 3 a.m. Our plan was solid, projecting $8 million in annual savings through strategic reorganization. The board meeting was scheduled for a Thursday. On Wednesday afternoon, Penny texted, "Just got tapped to lead tomorrow's presentation. Damien thinks it might be good to have a different voice. That okay?" I was disappointed but trusted her. "Of course. We built it together. You'll be amazing." I couldn't attend. I was handling an emergency with our East Coast operations. When I returned, colleagues kept congratulating me on our innovative approach. I smiled and thanked them, assuming Penny had shared credit, until I saw the presentation slides that had been distributed to leadership. My name appeared nowhere, not on the title, not in the acknowledgements, not in the footnotes, just Penny's name, prominently featured as the architect of the entire strategy we'd built together. I found her in the break room that afternoon. "There seems to be a mistake with the slides," I said quietly. "My name isn't anywhere on the presentation." She stirred her tea slowly, not meeting my eyes. "I must have forgotten to add you," she said lightly. "You understand. Things move quickly before these big meetings." But I caught something in her expression, calculation. This wasn't an oversight. "You should tell Damien it was our joint work," I suggested. "Oh," she looked surprised. "I already discussed implementation steps with him. He's impressed with my strategic thinking. It might muddy things to change the narrative now." She touched my arm. "There'll be other opportunities for you." In that moment, something shifted between us. The friendship I thought we had cracked like glass. I said nothing more. What could I do? Complain that my friend hadn't given me credit? I'd seem petty, insecure, so I nodded and walked away, the betrayal burning in my chest. For the next 4 months, I rebuilt my strategy from scratch. Different approach, stronger numbers. I worked alone, shared nothing. When the VP position was officially posted, we both applied. My proposal predicted $12 million in savings. Hers reached barely $9 million. 3 days before the announcement, I found Penny in the utility closet near the main hall, examining the building's safety panel. She jumped when I opened the door, just curious how the building systems work, she explained with a tight smile. I should have known then. I should have said something. The day of the announcement arrived. Everyone gathered in the main hall. The CEO gave his speech about company growth and future plans. Then he called Teresa from HR to make the official announcement. That's when the alarm went off. After the evacuation, we were all sent home. Standard protocol, they said. The announcement will be rescheduled. I sat in my car, hands gripping the wheel, unable to drive away. The feeling of being so close, only to have it yanked away, left me hollow. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Meeting, tomorrow, 6 a.m. Come alone, Damien. I barely slept, my mind racing through possibilities. Was I being let go? Had Penny somehow convinced them I was unqualified? Had I imagined her smirk during the evacuation? I arrived at the empty building at 5:50 a.m. The security guard nodded, as if expecting me, and pointed toward the executive floor. Damien's office smelled like leather and coffee. He gestured to a chair without looking up from his computer. I've been watching both of you, he said finally. Something felt wrong, so I started paying attention. He turned his monitor toward me and played a video. The footage showed Penny entering the utility closet 3 separate times that week. The final clip from yesterday clearly captured her pulling the fire alarm precisely when Teresa began the announcement. But there was more. Security footage showing her accessing my computer after hours, screenshots of her forwarding my emails to her personal account, even a recording of her telling another director that she originated the cost-saving framework I'd developed. My hands trembled. Why are you showing me this? Because I need to know what kind of person I'm promoting, he said. Someone who crumbles when challenged, or someone who stands firm. He paused. The announcement was a test. I suspected she'd try something. I just needed proof of how far she'd go. I couldn't process what he was saying. You knew? This whole time? Not at first, he admitted. But after that board presentation, things didn't add up. The work was excellent, but when I asked Penny specific questions about implementation, her answers were surface level. Then I noticed how she'd subtly take credit for your team's wins. Small things that formed a pattern. He leaned forward. So I set a trap. I let information leak that you were getting the promotion. Then I waited to see what would happen. You used me as bait, I said, unsure whether to feel validated or manipulated. I exposed behavior that was poisoning this company, he corrected. The question now is, what do you want to do about it? I stared at Damien, his question hanging between us. What did I want to do about Penny's betrayal? I want fairness, I said finally, not revenge. A hint of approval flickered across his face. There will be an all-staff meeting tomorrow morning at 9. Be there 15 minutes early. As I drove home, my phone buzzed with a text from Penny. Heard they're announcing tomorrow for real. Don't get your hopes up. Some people are just meant to lead, others to follow. I didn't respond. That night, I barely slept, imagining different scenarios for the morning. Would Penny be fired on the spot? Would there be a public confrontation? The thought made my stomach tighten. Despite everything, public humiliation felt wrong. But then again, she'd tried to humiliate me in front of the entire company. I arrived at 8:45 the next morning. The main hall was already filling with curious employees. Penny stood near the front, chatting with several directors, looking completely at ease. Damien motioned me to a side room where Teresa from HR and 2 people I didn't recognize waited. This is Greta from legal and Officer Reed from building security, Damien explained. Greta stepped forward. We've prepared documentation of all incidents. However, we wanted to discuss options with you before proceeding. Options? I asked. Yes, she said. In cases like this, some companies prefer to handle matters quietly to avoid disruption. Others believe transparency serves as a deterrent to similar behavior. I understood what she was asking. Did I want Penny's actions exposed publicly or handled behind closed doors? Before I could answer, Damien's assistant burst in. Sir, we have a situation. Damien excused himself and stepped out. Through the gap in the door, I saw Penny talking animatedly with a board member I recognized as Thomas, the CEO's most vocal critic on the executive team. They both looked in our direction, then continued their intense conversation. When Damien returned, his expression had hardened. It seems Miss Harris has concerns about targeted harassment and hostile work environment. She's suggesting to Thomas that certain executives, meaning me, have personal vendettas against promising female leaders. My heart sank. She was playing the discrimination card, positioning herself as the victim before we could expose her as the perpetrator. Thomas is already skeptical of my leadership style, Damien continued. He'll use this to question my judgment at the next board review. So what happens now? I asked, feeling the opportunity for justice slipping away. We proceed carefully, Greta said. If we accuse her publicly without allowing her to respond, it could strengthen her claim of unfair treatment. Officer Reed checked his watch. The meeting starts in 5 minutes. What's the plan? Damien rubbed his temples. We stick to the announcement. Lydia gets the promotion as decided. We'll handle the other matter privately. I felt a wave of disappointment. Penny would face no immediate consequences. She'd smile and congratulate me to my face while plotting her next move behind my back. We walked into the main hall. The space fell quiet as Damien took the podium. Penny stood confidently in the front row, Thomas beside her. Thank you all for coming, Damien began. Yesterday's announcement was unfortunately interrupted, but today, we'll complete it properly. He nodded to Teresa. She stepped forward. We're thrilled to announce our new Vice President of Operations. Excuse me, Thomas interrupted, standing up. Before we continue, I believe there are some concerns that should be addressed regarding the selection process. My heart dropped. It was happening. Penny had convinced him to intervene. Damien's jaw tightened. Thomas, this is hardly the appropriate forum. When is the appropriate time to discuss fairness? Thomas countered. I've received troubling information about bias in this selection process. Penny stood beside him, her expression a perfect blend of reluctance and concern, as though she hated being the center of this controversy, but felt morally obligated to speak up. The room buzzed with whispers. I felt 300 pairs of eyes darting between us, sensing the tension, hungry for drama. If there are concerns, Damien said evenly, we have procedures for addressing them. This isn't one of them. Procedures that you oversee. Thomas shot back. I think transparency serves everyone best. He turned to the crowd. Shouldn't we all know how these decisions are made? I watched my promotion, my vindication, my moment of truth dissolving into a political battle between executives. Then something unexpected happened. Greta from legal stepped forward. Actually, if we're discussing transparency, I have some relevant information to share. She nodded to someone at the back of the room. The large presentation screen lowered, and the lights dimmed slightly. A video began playing crisp, high-definition footage from the previous day. It showed Penny entering the utility closet, checking her watch, then deliberately pulling the fire alarm exactly as Teresa began to speak. The room fell silent, Penny's face drained of color. We have additional footage, Greta continued calmly, showing a pattern of behavior that raises serious concerns. The screen changed to show Penny accessing my computer after hours, forwarding emails, and time-stamped records of file access. Then came the audio recording of her claiming my work as her own to another director. Thomas slowly sat down, distancing himself from Penny. Greta turned to face the room. Our company values innovation, collaboration, and integrity. What we don't value is theft of intellectual property, sabotage, and triggering false emergencies that put employees at risk and cost the company thousands in response fees. Security officers appeared at both doors. Not aggressively, just present. Penny, Damien said quietly, I think it's best if you come with us to discuss this privately. She looked around the room wildly, seeking allies, finding none. Then her eyes locked on me, filling with venom. You planned this, she hissed loud enough for nearby colleagues to hear. You couldn't stand that I might be better than you, so you set me up. I shook my head. No, Penny, you did this to yourself. 6 months ago, when you decided our friendship meant nothing compared to your ambition. Security moved toward her, not roughly, but with clear purpose. She straightened her shoulders. You think this is over? It's not. You have no idea who I know, who my connections are. Her voice carried across the silent room. I made you, Lydia. I can break you just as easily. As they escorted her out, Damien returned to the podium. Now, as I was saying before we were interrupted, our new Vice President of Operations has demonstrated exceptional strategic thinking, integrity, and remarkable grace under pressure. He said my name. This time, everyone heard it. Applause broke out, hesitant at first, then building to genuine enthusiasm. Colleagues approached to congratulate me, their expressions a mix of respect and shock at what they'd witnessed. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt hollow. The friendship I thought I'd had with Penny, was any of it real? Had she been calculating her moves from the very beginning? That afternoon, I sat in my new office, the corner space with windows overlooking the city, trying to process everything that had happened. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Got a minute? It was Raina from marketing, holding 2 cups of coffee. She set one on my desk. That was intense this morning. That's one word for it, I agreed, taking the cup gratefully. You know, she said, leaning against the doorframe. Penny approached me last week with an odd request. I looked up. What kind of request? She wanted access to the presentation templates for the quarterly marketing report. Said you asked her to review them. Raina tilted her head. When I checked with you and you knew nothing about it, I figured she was up to something. I mentioned it to Damien. I blinked. You're the one who alerted him? One of many, apparently. After that board presentation fiasco, people started noticing things. She shrugged. Nobody liked seeing someone climb by stepping on others. As she left, I realized the extent of what had happened. This hadn't been just Damien setting a trap. Multiple colleagues had seen through Penny's behavior and quietly reported their concerns. The evidence against her hadn't been collected by one person, but by an entire community of coworkers who valued fairness. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. This isn't over. You think you've won? You have no idea what's coming. P. I stared at the message, a chill running through me. Despite everything, the video evidence, the witnesses, the public exposure, Penny wasn't backing down. She was threatening me. I considered showing the text to HR or Damien, but hesitated. Would it seem like I was being paranoid? Making too much of an angry outburst from someone who'd just lost everything? Before I could decide, my desk phone rang. It was Damien. We need to talk, he said, his voice tight. Thomas just called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. Apparently, Penny has made some serious accusations about evidence tampering and targeted harassment. But the video clearly showed. I know what it showed, he cut in. But she's claiming we edited the footage and orchestrated the whole thing to prevent her from exposing larger issues within the company. That's absurd, I said. It's absurd, but it's dangerous. His voice lowered. She's connected to several board members through previous work relationships. They may give her claims more credibility than they deserve. So what do we do? There was a long pause. We need to be prepared for the possibility that this isn't over. Not by a long shot. As I hung up, I stared at Penny's text again. Her final words echoed in my mind. I made you, Lydia. I can break you just as easily. I wondered if she was right. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for 8 a.m. the next day. I barely slept that night, reviewing everything that had happened, trying to anticipate Penny's next move. Her text message haunted me. You have no idea what's coming. I arrived early, the building still quiet except for the cleaning staff. I needed time to think, to prepare for whatever accusations Penny might throw at me. As I approached the executive floor, I heard raised voices coming from the boardroom. The meeting wasn't supposed to start for another hour, but through the glass doors, I could see Penny gesturing emphatically to Thomas and 2 other board members I recognized as Elaine and Vincent. Completely fabricated, I heard Penny say as I got closer. They edited that footage to frame me because I was about to expose their financial irregularities. I froze. Financial irregularities? What was she talking about? I have proof, Penny continued, sliding a folder across the table. Transactions that don't add up, projects with inflated budgets, money disappearing into consulting fees for companies that barely exist. Thomas opened the folder, frowning as he examined the contents. If this is accurate, every number is backed up, Penny assured him. I was going to bring this to the board next week, but Damien somehow found out. That's why he orchestrated this whole thing, to discredit me before I could speak up. My blood ran cold. She was laying groundwork to not only save herself, but to take down Damien, and possibly me in the process. And these board members were listening. I ducked into a nearby office before they could spot me and pulled out my phone to warn Damien. No signal. The executive floor was known for its dead zones. Something about the building materials blocking reception. I needed to get downstairs and call him, but as I turned to leave, the office door opened. Elaine, the board member, stood there looking surprised. Lydia, she said, you're here early. I was just reviewing some notes for the meeting, I stammered. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Did you happen to overhear our conversation? I heard enough, I admitted. Elaine, whatever Penny's showing you, it's not what you think. And what do I think? She asked coolly. That there are financial irregularities, that Damien is covering something up. I took a breath. Penny is manipulating the narrative because she got caught. Elaine studied me for a long moment. You seem very certain. Because I know her, I said. We worked side by side for years. This is what she does. She twists facts, creates doubt, positions herself as the whistleblower when she's actually the problem. Those are serious accusations, Elaine replied. Just as serious as the ones she's making. The difference is, hers aren't true. Elaine checked her watch. The full board will be here in 45 minutes. I suggest you use that time to prepare your perspective. She paused at the door. And Lydia, if you're right about Penny, you'll need more than just your word against hers. As she left, panic washed over me. Penny was always 3 steps ahead, always planning her next move. While I'd been celebrating my promotion, she'd been crafting her counterattack. I hurried downstairs to call Damien, but he didn't answer. When I tried Greta from legal, she picked up immediately. Penny's telling the board there are financial irregularities, I explained breathlessly. She's positioning herself as a whistleblower being silenced. Clever, Greta said, sounding unsurprised. Create a bigger scandal to distract from your own misconduct. What do we do? The board seems to be taking her seriously. Because financial fraud is the kind of thing that scares board members more than office politics, she explained. But don't worry, we anticipated something like this. You did? Damien has been documenting Penny's behavior for months. After the fire alarm incident, we did a complete audit of everything she's touched. There was a pause. Meet us in conference room B, bring your laptop. When I arrived, Damien was already there with Greta and our chief financial officer, Nora. They had papers spread across the table and a presentation loaded on the screen. Perfect timing, Damien said. We need your help with something specific. For the next 30 minutes, we worked through financial records, project allocations, and expense reports. The irregularities Penny had identified were all projects I had overseen, budgets I had approved, vendor relationships I had managed. She's trying to implicate you directly, Nora explained. Make it look like you've been misallocating funds with Damien's approval. But that's absurd, I said. All those expenses are legitimate. We know, Damien assured me, but she's presented the data selectively, removing context that would explain the numbers. The question is, Greta added, how did she access these records? Some of this information requires high-level clearance. A horrible thought occurred to me. My login credentials. She must have gotten them when she accessed my computer after hours. Nora nodded grimly. Which means any queries run under your login would look like you were the one investigating these transactions, making it seem like I knew about problems but didn't report them, I realized. Or worse, that I was involved. Exactly, Damien said. She's been planning this for longer than we thought. This wasn't just about taking credit for your work. She was building a paper trail to use against you if needed. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd imagined. While I'd been treating her as a friend, she'd been setting me up as a potential fall person. As we walked to the boardroom, Damien pulled me aside. Let me handle the initial discussion. When the time comes, I'll signal you. The full board was assembled when we entered, 12 members, including Thomas, Elaine, and Vincent. Penny sat at the far end of the table, looking composed and serious in a simple black blazer. She didn't react when she saw me. Thank you all for coming on such short notice, Thomas began. We have some concerning information to discuss regarding company operations and potential misconduct. Penny leaned forward. Before we start, I want to thank the board for giving me this opportunity to speak. What happened yesterday was a coordinated effort to silence me before I could bring forward serious concerns about financial mismanagement within the company. She proceeded to outline her allegations, the same ones I'd overheard earlier, but with more detail. As she spoke, she displayed spreadsheets and transaction records on the screen, all with my name or department highlighted. As you can see, she continued, these discrepancies follow a pattern that suggests intentional misrepresentation. When I began investigating these irregularities, I was suddenly accused of misconduct and publicly humiliated. Several board members glanced at me, their expressions troubled. When Penny finished, Thomas turned to Damien. These are serious allegations. How do you respond? Damien stood calmly. First, I want to thank Penny for bringing her concerns to the board. Transparency is essential for good governance. I blinked in surprise. This wasn't what I expected him to say. However, he continued, context is equally important. Nora, would you walk us through the financial review we conducted? Our CFO took over, methodically addressing each irregularity Penny had identified. The supposedly suspicious consulting fees were for cybersecurity services during a system upgrade. The inflated project budgets included contingency funds that had been approved by the board itself. Every transaction Miss Harris flagged has complete documentation and appropriate approvals, Nora concluded. Penny's confidence wavered slightly, but she rallied. The issue isn't whether there's documentation. It's that the documentation itself was manipulated after the fact. That's why I was targeted yesterday, to discredit me before I could expose this. An interesting theory, Damien said. Greta, could you address the timeline question? Greta opened her laptop. We've run a complete audit of our financial systems, including access logs and modification timestamps. She displayed a series of records on the screen. What's notable isn't the transactions themselves, but who was examining them and when. The screen showed access logs with Penny's name highlighted, dates and times she'd accessed financial records going back months. Ms. Harris began accessing these specific records approximately one day after she learned she wasn't getting the VP position, Greta explained. Furthermore, she used Lydia's credentials to run several of these queries, creating the appearance that Lydia was investigating these issues. The room fell silent. That's absurd, Penny sputtered. You're manipulating the evidence again. The system logs are maintained by a third-party security firm, Greta countered. They can't be altered by anyone inside the company. Thomas looked troubled. Ms. Harris, did you use Lydia's credentials to access financial records? Penny faltered. She gave me her password for a joint project. I might have inadvertently remained logged in as her. Damien nodded to me. This was my cue. I stood, my heart racing but my voice steady. Board members, what you're witnessing is a pattern of behavior. 6 months ago, Penny took credit for our joint work at a critical presentation. Yesterday, she triggered a fire alarm to interrupt my promotion announcement. And now, she's attempting to create a financial scandal to deflect from her own misconduct. I paused, meeting each board member's eyes. But there's something you don't know yet. All attention turned to me. Penny didn't just do this to me, I said, opening my laptop. She's done it before. I displayed an email on the screen, a message I'd received late last night from a woman named Justine. This arrived yesterday evening after news of Penny's dismissal circulated. The email read, I saw what happened with Penny Harris at your company. The same thing happened to me at Riverside Associates 3 years ago. She stole my client portfolio, sabotaged my presentation, and got me fired. When I tried to fight back, she threatened to ruin my reputation. I've attached documentation, if it helps. I displayed more emails, 5 in total, from former colleagues of Penny at previous companies. Each detailed similar patterns of behavior, taking credit, sabotage, manipulation. After receiving these, I contacted our previous HR director who handled Penny's hiring. I continued. He admitted that one of her references had called him after she was hired, trying to warn us but afraid to go on record because of threats she'd made. Penny's face had gone white. This is a setup. They're all lying. Perhaps, I acknowledged. But is everyone lying? The security footage? The system logs? Former colleagues from 3 different companies? All part of some elaborate conspiracy against you? I turned to face her directly. Or is it possible that this is who you really are? Someone who uses others to advance, then discards them when they're no longer useful. Thomas cleared his throat. Miss Harris, do you have any response to these additional allegations? Penny looked around the table, finding no allies. Even Thomas had distanced himself. This is a witch hunt, she declared, standing abruptly. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. As she stormed toward the door, I called after her. Penny, she paused, turning back with venom in her eyes. I never wanted revenge, I said quietly. I just wanted the truth to come out. And it has. Not because I destroyed you, but because you couldn't stop trying to destroy others. The boardroom door closed behind her with a definitive click. In the silence that followed, Vincent was the first to speak. I believe we owe you an apology, Lydia. We should have been more skeptical of these accusations. What happens now? Elaine asked. Miss Harris will face legal consequences for the fire alarm incident, Greta explained. As for the attempted defamation and unauthorized system access, we'll address those separately. Damien turned to me. And Lydia will continue the excellent work that earned her the VP position in the first place. The meeting adjourned, and board members stopped to congratulate me as they left. When only Damien and I remained, I finally asked the question that had been bothering me. Those emails from Penny's former colleagues, how did they know to contact me? Damien smiled slightly. I might have reached out to her previous employers yesterday evening, just to give them a heads up about what happened here. So you created a network of her victims, I realized. You gave them a safe way to come forward. I opened a door, he corrected. They chose to walk through it. 6 weeks later, I sat in my VP office, reviewing quarterly results. Our restructured operations were on track to exceed the projected savings. My team was thriving under new leadership principles: transparency, collaboration, credit where it was due. I'd heard Penny had taken a position at a smaller firm across the country. Sometimes I wondered if her new colleagues knew what they were in for. I considered warning them, then decided against it. The truth had a way of revealing itself without my intervention. My phone buzzed with a notification, a news alert about corporate ethics and whistleblower protections. The article featured advice from various executives, including a quote from me about the importance of creating cultures where people can raise concerns safely. I smiled at the irony. In trying to destroy me, Penny had inadvertently made me an advocate for the very transparency she'd weaponized. Her betrayal had transformed me into someone stronger, more vigilant, and ultimately more successful than I might have been otherwise. That was the revenge she never saw coming. Not that I would tear her down, but that I would rise higher because of what she did. Not through manipulation or sabotage, but through integrity and resilience. If you've made it to the end of this story, hit that like button and subscribe to hear more tales of workplace justice. Share in the comments your own experiences with office politics. Did you ever have a penny in your professional life? Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, but about becoming better than you ever thought possible.